Hello, Dr. Owen. My name is Matthew. I am in your 2ROOA course, and for the final deliverable for the skills development project, I'm going to be doing the Casper ethics test and flashcards. And so, what is the Casper test? Casper is an online open response situational judgment test. It asks what you would do in a tough situation, and more importantly, why. This helps determine behavioral tendencies of applicants pursuing people-centered professions. Now, that's the official description of the test on the Casper website, but essentially what this test is it is testing you and determining what kind of person you are. Many professional schools will use the Casper test to assess their applicants and make sure that they're people. They want their applicants to understand other individuals. They want them to be empathetic and be able to, put themselves in other people's shoes so that they can better solve their problems. And so that's very pertinent in medical school and physicians. And so obviously you want a doctor who will empathize with the patient and be able to understand their pains and not just, throw them a diagnosis and then look the other way. And so the reason why I did this as my skills development project is because I am interested in applying to medical schools as I enter my upper years in university. And so if I were able to increase or better my skills in ethical situations, then that would definitely help in my Casper test application, but also in life in general. It's good to be a good person. Um, so yeah, some more general facts before we move on. Casper stands for Computer-Based Assessment for Sampling Personal Characteristics. It's 90 minutes long with 12 different stations, and the stations have ethical issues in either video or text format, as we'll see in the flashcards. And you're given 5 minutes to answer the three questions asked per station. Now, 5 minutes is definitely not a lot of time to answer three very deep yet broad questions. And so you'll see some examples in the flashcards, but it can definitely be difficult, to say the least. And like I said before, the Casper test essentially tests who you are and measures your compassion and humanity. And it's marked by a live marking team and not by computers or programs. So I think that's a very important aspect. You can't necessarily measure somebody's, ability to empathize with others through a program. So how they do it is the grading scheme is from a scale of 1 to 9, and each station that you are tested on is marked by a different marking team, so that you get different perspectives on your marking. Um, and another important aspect that I do want to point out, which I found it to be a roadblock in my studying, is that Casper does not release test scores at all to anybody. And so even if you were successful, if you were unsuccessful in your application process to medical school, you don't really know how well you scored on the Casper test. And the reason why they do this is because if they were to release marks, then people who scored well would post their marks online, their application, their whole test, and then future applicants like me, we could just easily copy their answers and kind of like fake our personalities, which is definitely not good for the medical field and the medical profession. And so that's why they don't release it. However, the people who have been accepted into medical school and have been tested on the Casper test can assume they did well on the Casper test, so they just post their answers, and from there we use that as a base. All right, so what I've learned from Casper practice. So, in order to prepare for the flashcards that I made, I obviously did a lot of Casper practice questions. And so there are a couple tips and tricks that I've learned along the way. First is skills tested. So I'll just list them out first. Communication, collaboration, empathy, equity, ethics, professionalism, motivation, problem solving, resiliency, self-awareness, and desire for understanding. So those are a lot of skills, but essentially what these are essentially like um, key aspects that they're looking for in your answers. So they're testing who you are, right? So if they see that you are exhibiting good communication, collaboration, empathy, etc., then they're going to be able to say that you are a good person and you're able to become a good physician because you can empathize with others, etc. Another important aspect is that medical knowledge is not tested, so they're not going to ask you like, where is this bone located within the body? And even on top of that, many of the situations that they give you, in the stations are not based on healthcare at all. Like some of them are just, within a store or everyday life. So it's definitely not necessarily related to medical knowledge, um, and more based testing you on your personality. Now, those are a lot of skills tested, and it's hard to remember all of them, especially when you're in the heat of the moment during the test. So, if there's a general guideline I could provide, it's that you want to be able to demonstrate compassion and humanity in your answers. If you base your answers off of these two aspects, you already have a good, strong baseline. And then obviously you would need to expand on that. But those are the two that I would say worked well in my practice. Now, some more general tips. Typing speed has to be really fast. Like I said before, 5 minutes is not a lot of time to answer three questions, and each question has to be a pretty decent paragraph size. So around 110 words per minute would be great. I've tested myself in the past couple weeks, and I have been sub 100, so like 98, 99 words per minute, which is okay, but I'm definitely going to practice in the next couple months and get that up. Wording is very important in your answers. So, if you're thinking the right answer, but, by accident you don't say it or you don't communicate it in your answer the same way that you're thinking it, the markers aren't going to understand you and they're not going to be able to evaluate your personality and give you the best mark possible. So, you need to be able to effectively communicate your answer in words. Thirdly, sorry, is to check your assumptions. So a lot of the times people may have biases or stereotypes that they don't even realize that they have. And so what you want to do is you want to take a step back and look at it from a holistic perspective and make sure that you're not placing any biases or perspective on the fictional characters that are within the story to make sure that, you're the best physician that they're looking for. And finally, ethical situations are not purely black and white. There are so many shades of gray. There's often no right or wrong answer. So that is a very hard point to take in because you have to get graded on this one way or another. And it's kind of hard to be told, oh, there's no right or wrong answer. So essentially, what they're looking for is they're not looking for if you can give the right answer. They're looking for how you approached the problem and how you got to your final answer. If you're taking the right processes to get to that final answer, then you'll have a better chance of scoring higher. Now on to the flashcards. So for my final deliverable, I decided to make 3 different flashcards, each with a unique situation, and then answers following. And the answers that are written on my flashcards are mine. And then in addition to my own writing, I would take the advice of different answers that I have found online and incorporate it into my own answers. So taking that into consideration, the answers here on these flashcards are very, very good answers, and the markers of the Casper test wouldn't expect answers of these caliber. So just keep that in consideration and take that into mind when you do read these answers. So here's the first situation that we're going to look at, and I will show the questions after.
Scenario. All right, let's go. Do you see that? What? 2 rows down. I think Lawrence is cheating. I can't believe it. He totally is. I can see him looking off Sarah's exam and copying her answers. Well, this is the hardest class of the year. He's probably worried about keeping his grades up for med school applications. Yeah, but this is anatomy. Shouldn't we actually know this material if we're going to be doctors? I mean, I sure think so, but I don't know if I want to get involved with Lawrence's business. What about you? What do you think we should do? What about you? What do you think we should do? Question. Scenario.
All right, so that was the first situation, and here are the questions for that situation. So 1, what will you do in this situation? 2, imagine you knew the neighbor was knowingly letting your classmate cheat. How would that change your answer? And 3, if you were the professor and learned your students had been caught cheating, what would your actions be? Now, 5 minutes is quite short to answer all these questions, but we do have to create an answer. And so, if you wanted to try these questions yourself, feel free to and pause the video here. But if not, let's just move on to my exemplary answers. So number 1, what would you do in this situation? After the exam finishes, I would speak in private to my classmate and notify him when I saw him cheating. I would say I intend to speak to the professor about his behavior, but I think it would be best for him to admit to the professor himself that he cheated. He may be worried about the consequences, but I would tell him I would support him through the process and help him plead his case to the conduct committee. I would tell him that academic dishonesty is of the utmost importance and that students aspiring to be physicians should choose honesty and morality over cheating and unfairness. And so the key characteristics that I described in my actions here are empathy, because we show compassion and support to our classmate, and we essentially allow them to confess their cheating themselves, and this allows for individual growth. And we also express our commitment to ethics and also professionalism within the class as fellow students. Nice. Okay, so the second question is, imagine you knew the neighbor was knowingly letting your classmate cheat. How would you change your answer? So I would also talk to that neighboring student after the exam concludes and encourage them to admit their action to the professor as well. I would explain that physicians should uphold their moral integrities and allowing others to break the rules is detrimental to the entire community. We should respect each other and not allow dishonest actions to happen, as well as disrespecting our classmates who have studied harder to succeed honestly. So this answer shows the balance between upholding the medical profession and as well as supporting your classmates. So this answer also shows that cheating is harmful to medicine as a whole, and even though it might benefit you if you, for example, don't get caught later on in the long run, that might have very negative effects if you're not able to answer questions later. And the last question is, if you were the professor and learned your students had been caught cheating, what would your actions be? So my answer is I would explain the importance of academic honesty to them and remind them that their mark should be an accurate and honest reflection of their genuine efforts in this course. Then I would ask them to explain their reasons for cheating on this exam, and though cheating should never be excused, I would want to understand the full picture to help my students present their case to the conduct committee. If this is a first time offense and the students are truly expressing remorse and their apologies, I would recommend to the disciplinary committee to issue learning or rebuilding opportunities such as probation instead of expulsion or suspension. And so, being a teacher, putting myself in a teacher's shoes, it shows that I have a desire to gather more information before acting and, putting on these consequences on these students. And this is just like a physician who has to gather more information before making a diagnosis so that they don't miss out on any details and don't act too quickly or rashly. All right, so here's the second question. It's a separate link. I couldn't get the video player in here, so just bear with me for 1 second. Let's go to, sorry, here.
All right, guys, enough of the social media. We came here to focus. Our group assignment's due at the end of the week, and we're not even close to finishing.
All right. You seem pretty stressed.
Well, ever since Paul left, we've all had a lot more to do in this. And the section he left us with needed a lot more work as it is.
Yeah, but it was for a good reason. From what he said, his medical condition sounded pretty serious. He had to put his courses on hold for the entire semester.
Yeah, but this close to handing. He knew how much this assignment meant to all our grades. What?
It's Paul. There's a photo of him at his friend's pool party.
You see? I knew it. Well, we have to talk to the subject coordinator. He can't get the same grade as us if he's out there having fun and we're in here.
Oh, hang on. This photo could have been taken weeks ago and only posted now. I don't want to spread any rumors when we don't have all the facts.
All right. It's your call. What should we do?
All right, so that is the second question. And just for reference, this is the official Casper website. So this is a type of question that we would actually see on their test. All right, so the first question for this situation is, what do you recommend your group to your group members. So first, I would make the efforts to gather more information about the photo and Paul's situation. I would contact Paul directly about the photo and inquire about his current medical status. When the photo was taken, and if he is now able to discuss with our group the next options to move forwards. In addition, I would find a third party to confirm if Paul was at this pool party on the date that Paul provided our group to ensure that the full truth is exposed and that we understand the entire picture, no pun intended. If the picture was from a long time ago, I would explain the situation to my group mates as well as support Paul through his recovery. If the picture is recent, I would ensure that we strongly communicate with Paul the duties of being a team member, as well as listening to his concerns and reasons as to why he left our group. We would address these reasons to ensure Paul is welcomed back to our group in a comfortable and effective manner, or work with the academic advisor to provide a successful solution to this issue if Paul is not planning on returning. And so this answer here demonstrates the steps of gathering more information after presented with an initial case and giving the group member a chance to make the right decision before reporting his actions. Just like we're doing here, physicians should have a commitment to being fair, and this sample response displays justice. So do you think it is okay to report a concern to a supervisor based on a suspicion? Why or why not? So it is essential that I verify any concerns before reporting it to my supervisor. Prematurely reporting concerns can result in miscommunication and incorrect methods of action, especially if crucial information is revealed afterwards. If I cannot verify my concerns with facts at this time, I would consider the benefits and consequences of staying silent or making the report. Now, as a physician, if I suspected someone was putting a patient's life in danger, for example, I would report my suspicion right away, and I wouldn't necessarily consider the benefits and doubts. I would trust my supervisor to use their resources to investigate the matter further and make a final decision. So, based on this answer, the response that we wrote addresses the difficulty of dealing with ambiguity, which occurs in the medical field quite often. So, like I said, towards the second half of the answer, when a patient's life is at risk, doctors must think and act quickly, so you don't necessarily have to weigh the benefits and consequences. But in a situation kind of like this, it's best to take a step back, look at the whole picture, and make sure that you're making the right decision before you move forwards. And the last question for the situation is, do you believe that one false or inappropriate post on social media can have a lasting effect on someone's career? Explain your response. My answer is yes. Social media posts have the power to impact a person's career. We consistently witness individuals attacked for offensive posts they made in the past on news media outlets and even social media, even if their current views have changed. Since physicians must have the public's trust to save lives and provide exceptional healthcare to the public, we should consider how our activity on social media as physicians could be interpreted by others and ultimately help maintain a high level of integrity and respect within the medical community. So that answer is pretty self-explanatory. And here is the last situation that I have provided, and this one instead is a text-based situation, so not a video-based one. You are sharing a hotel room with a co-worker, Lisa, during a business trip. She's left her suitcase open, and you notice a vial of marijuana in it. You ask Lisa about it, and she tells you that she is epileptic and that it's medical marijuana. Medical cannabis is legal in your state. However, your workplace has a strict no drugs policy. What would you do? Okay, so the first question is, part of your company's drug policy includes reporting other employees who disobey the policy. Would you report Lisa? So as Lisa's coworker, I would trust that her marijuana is beneficial for her epilepsy and that her usage is legal. However, I would want to know more about how her usage interacts with our company's drug policy. So for example, I'd ask her if our supervisors are aware of her marijuana medicinal usage and whether she uses it during work hours. I would also further analyze the drug policy that our company has to gain a clearer understanding of its rules and how Lisa and I can proceed. Now, cannabis laws are changing quickly nowadays, so it is possible that the policy was written when marijuana use was still illegal. Nevertheless, if I did determine her usage to violate drug policy, I would encourage her to speak with our supervisor or HR rep before I filed a complaint. Her medical needs might qualify as an exception. So this response displays a respect for key medical ethics, such as Lisa's autonomy to determine her own health care and the prioritization of her well-being. And I'm also demonstrating how I can be a supportive, but also, I guess, a strict or an employee who's set in the policies and will abide by them. All right, the second question is, say Lisa tells you that she only uses marijuana during off work hours. Would that change your course of action? My answer is it depends on the drug policy specifics. So for example, if the policy states that employees cannot use drugs during work hours, then there is no problem with Lisa using it to outside of work. So while the entire duration of the business trip may be considered work hours, I would still consider the difference between active work hours and off the clock rest time. So, within this answer and in the past answer, we demonstrate that we take the company policy very seriously. We don't display necessarily a strong desire to punish our coworker Lisa, which is a good thing, because if we were to demonstrate in our answers that we wanted to punish Lisa, then it would be seen as a lack of empathy. So instead, we attempt to understand the full situation more, and, for example, fully understand the drug policy at our company, and take the legal and political complexities into account, right, before taking action. And finally, the last question for today: which is more important, Lisa's medical needs or your company's drug policy? Now, as a future physician, I believe that the health and well-being of individuals should always be prioritized. At the same time, professionalism and ethics are important, which includes honesty, respect, and following rules. Lisa's situation is in a difficult spot between these two sections, and if determined amongst ourselves, we can even speak further discussion amongst the employees to ratify the policies to better accommodate the employees' medical needs. And so this is a great answer, because doctors always need to make sure that the policies within the hospital, certain treatments and whatnot, even though they are written down and may sound like they're set in stone, should always be subject to change if we realize that there's a better way to go about things, especially if it's regarding a person's health. And here are the references that I've used for this presentation. Obviously, I used a little bit more practice questions that I found online and a bunch of YouTube videos. You can always just find them online, but here are the main ones that I used to base off from my presentation. And thank you for listening. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch these videos. And yeah, if you agreed with the answers I put, or if you disagreed with the answers I had, then feel free to reach out to me, and hopefully I can use these skills and I can remember these skills for the next couple of years when I start applying to medical schools. And I appreciate this course. Thank you.